You are about to cross into a world where fear is real. Real stories, unexplained phenomena where the supernatural lurks in the shadows. From the Portal of Dread, History 1 Auction House.
Hello, brave souls, or maybe just curious ones. Welcome to the Portal of Dread, the place where your fears find a voice, and each story could be your last before lights out. Tonight, I invite you to watch 3 chilling tales of pure terror. Brace yourselves. When I first spotted that house on an auction website, it felt like I'd found my own little miracle. A colonial-style 2-story, nestled somewhere in rural Pennsylvania, surrounded by scraggly maple trees and thick woods. The listing photos had captured light streaming through dusty curtains, painting the place with a calm that promised to erase anyone's old life. The price was so low it was laughable. I didn't even hesitate. After my divorce, money felt like a hollow thing. What I craved was distance, anonymity, and a kind of silence that didn't ask uncomfortable questions. All I owned fit into my sedan. 4 boxes of odds and ends, some clothes, books, an air mattress, and a hand-me-down TV. When I pulled up to the house for the first time, I sensed it immediately. Some doors can only be opened by people desperate enough not to care what waits on the other side. Hauling my boxes up the front steps, I noticed the grimy windows. They almost looked like half-opened eyes, always watching. The moment I latched the gate behind me, I felt a boundary click shut, like I'd crossed into a space that didn't welcome strangers. I barely noticed the neighbors. Later, I'd realize I hardly saw anyone at all. Sometimes the shadow of someone walking in the distance, never more. The woods lined the property like an old guard, their branches bent low over the roof. At the local grocery store, I overheard someone say, "No house sits empty for years without a reason around here." I brushed it off as small-town superstition. The first days were spent settling in, trying to create a routine. Painting the cracked walls, washing dirty windows, chasing out bats from the attic crawl spaces. I went over every square inch. 3 bedrooms upstairs, an open living area, tiny kitchen in the back, and a damp cellar below. I even pulled out the old blueprints tucked in a drawer and traced every hallway. Nothing suggested there was an attic. But as people like to warn, old houses are professionals at hiding what they don't want you to find. Back then, I still believed it was the dark corners you watched out for. I didn't know those corners were quietly watching me too. By my 3rd night, I was already exhausted from moving boxes and cleaning. I collapsed in the living room, 90s sitcom reruns blaring in the background, and drifted into a shallow sleep, haunted by dreams of endless hallways and repeating doors. I jolted awake with the room freezing cold, like the air had been dunked in icy water. Absent-mindedly, I looked up at the ceiling. 3 sharp knocks, thud, 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 directly above my head. It didn't sound like settling wood or raccoons scratching. It had an almost calculated pattern. I tried to convince myself maybe it was pipes or the house shifting, but I knew deep down that was just an excuse. I tried to will myself back to sleep, turning up the TV and shutting the curtains against the whipping wind. The trees scraped at the siding with their branches like claws. That feeling of being watched, whether by the house or something worse, pressed against my chest. The next morning, brushing my teeth, I caught my own gaze in the bathroom mirror and thought, just for a split second, my reflection lagged behind my movements. It reminded me of the last fight I'd had with my ex. You spend too much time staring into your own emptiness. One day the silence is going to stare back. I had laughed it off, but those words clung to me. The following night, a storm battered the house. Thunder shook the floorboards and wind wailed through the rafters. I ate something from a can, sitting cross-legged on the dusty rug, when I heard it again. Thud, thud, thud. Louder this time, directly above me, not on the walls or doors, but the living room ceiling itself. Please let it just be an animal, I begged. Every rural house has those horror stories. Snakes in basements, raccoons in the crawl spaces. Grabbing a flashlight, I crept up the creaking stairs toward the bedrooms. In the hallway, there was a new dark line spreading along the ceiling, like a shadow bleeding through plaster. Up close, I realized it was a perfectly straight crack, far too clean for water damage. I reached up and touched something cold, metal, a hidden latch. My hand shook as I hesitated. Then I pulled. Suddenly, a folding attic ladder unfolded and crashed down, its old hinges shrieking into the dark. Would you have climbed those stairs, even if every record of the house denied there was anything up there at all? An ancient smell, rotting wood, earth, iron, filled the hallway. My flashlight flickered, its battery on its last legs. I climbed step by step, every squeak echoing like a warning. At the top it was pitch black, the beam of my light caught only fragments. The place up there felt like another world. Broken porcelain dolls lined the walls in neat rows, like an audience waiting for the next horror. A rocking chair creaked, actually moving, as if someone had just risen from its seat. Most of the walls were insulated with yellowed newspapers, faded photos hanging everywhere, each face scratched out with pen. In the far corner, propped against the wall, sat a huge cardboard box. "Do not open" scrawled across it. My instinct was to run, but curiosity, already poisoned by fear, rooted me in place. Opening the box filled my lungs with choking dust. Inside were dozens of home-labeled VHS tapes stacked in numeric order. Beside them, a black camcorder, somehow fully charged, like it had just been used. On the inside of the box's lid, I found a message. "Only look if you're ready to see everything." No name, just that off-putting challenge. I lugged the box and camcorder down to my bedroom. Outside, rain battered the windows. Inside, everything hummed with static. I slid in the first tape and pressed play. A shaking image of an empty bedroom, and not just any room. My bedroom. Same blanket, same clutter. I changed tapes, dreading what I'd see next. That night, someone was there. Me, asleep, filmed from above. Tape after tape showed angles of the stairs, the hall, my own bed, always from high up. As if someone or something was watching from a place that shouldn't exist. The last tape was labeled "Tonight." I watched as the grainy image revealed my room, the room in which I now sat. In the video, I sat on the bed, watching the television. Then the me in the footage turned to the camera. He smiled, but the eyes weren't mine. I spun around, heart pounding. Nothing there. When I looked back, the TV screen was frozen, my own face grinning back. Would you keep searching, or lock your doors and pray for daylight? I ran, nearly tumbling down the stairs. For hours, I sat in the dim kitchen, staring at the fridge until dawn crept in like smoke. That night, sweat-soaked, I woke to the low whir of the camcorder recording on its own, red light pointed right at me. It was a grey, miserable morning when I resolved to go back up there and finish this. As I walked up the stairs, I noticed every picture frame on the wall seemed tilted my way, as if the house itself was judging me. In the attic, the rocking chair had become still, but the covered mirror in the corner quivered. I tore off the sheet and pushed my face toward the cold glass. It all looked normal, except for me. In my place, a shadowy figure stared out, heavy-lidded eyes and a jagged, broken grin. The thing on the other side moved before I did, ducked its head and lifted a hand, palm pressing against the inside. I felt my own arm raise, out of my control, until my fingertips met the glass. It rippled beneath my touch, sucking away every trace of warmth. Panicking, I stumbled from the attic, pulled the ladder closed, and barricaded the hatch with boxes and chairs. The next day, I tried to reclaim normalcy, but everything felt off. Shadows seemed thicker in the corners. The walls creaked even during the daytime. Sometimes, if I walked past a window, I'd see a second face in the reflection, smirking where mine should be. Worst of all, my bathroom reflection moved slower than I did, or sometimes not at all. On a few occasions, I could have sworn it smiled when I frowned. Desperate, I decided to destroy all the evidence, the tapes, the mirror, the hatch. But when I reached the hallway, the hatch was gone. No ladder, no outline, only smooth ceiling. I tore at plaster, splintered wood with a crowbar. I tore my hands raw, but there was nothing. In desperation, I dug through every legal document about the place. The attic wasn't mentioned, not on any blueprint, not in any inspection. When I visited the county office, the clerk peered over his glasses. "We have no record of a transfer to your name, sir. House was registered recently, but with a different owner." I looked at the deed, and my own name was gone. Back outside, I walked past a storefront and saw myself in the mirrored window, a still version of me smiling long after I'd turned away. Driving home, I caught glimpses of the attic ceiling overlaid on puddles by the curb, as if every surface now carried a piece of that hidden place. I remembered my ex's joke. You never really leave a haunted house. Sometimes it decides to keep you instead. I ran, checking into a cheap motel far from that neighborhood, stuffing towels under the doors, keeping all the lights on. But I didn't escape. At 3 a.m., I awoke to the quiet hum of the camcorder, powered itself on and recording. I rushed to the bathroom, only to find my own reflection missing. The glass was pitch black. From deep inside that darkness, a pallid hand, my own hand, pressed from within. I leaned closer and saw my silhouette on the other side of the glass grin obscenely wide, beckoning me forward. Before I realized it, my hand was moving, meeting it halfway. Ice flooded through me, and then suddenly everything went blank. When I came to, it was just darkness. Across the mirror, I could just make out someone sitting on the hotel bed, my face staring into the camera, smiling. Now I was the one behind the glass. Days later, I found out the auction site had relisted the property. Charming rural home, ideal for fresh starts. Recently renovated attic for those who appreciate watching others sleep. And in the last photo, barely visible in the hallway, there's a blurry figure smiling at the mirror, waiting. So, have you ever felt watched by something only you could sense? Have you ever seen your reflection act in ways it shouldn't? Share your stories with us below and subscribe to the Portal of Dread for more nightmares. Because here, fear never sleeps.
History 2. The Code of Code.
The bluish luminescence of Diego's monitor sliced through the darkness of his room like a cold blade. It was 3:47 a.m. in Vasuras, and the 23-year-old was engrossed in his actuarial calculations when a peculiar notification flickered across his phone screen. New application available, CodeWhisper. Optimize your productivity beyond limits. Diego furrowed his brow. He hadn't searched for any application, much less one with such an outlandish name. The icon itself was unsettling. A black screen adorned with green lines of code that appeared to subtly undulate as if breathing. His background in actuarial science had schooled him in risk assessment, yet something in the pre-dawn hours compelled him to disregard all logic. Perhaps it was sheer exhaustion or the morbid curiosity that blossoms in the desolate hours of the night. With a single fateful tap, Diego downloaded the application. The very instant the installation concluded, every electronic device in the house emitted a unified sound, a low, guttural moan that should have been impossible for speakers to produce. The lights flickered in a rhythmic sequence like an ominous Morse code. And then, in the ensuing silence, Diego heard it for the first time. A digital whisper that seemed to emanate from within the very walls themselves, laden with the anguish of a soul eternally ensnared within the infinite labyrinth of binary code. What Diego didn't realize was that he had just unleashed something that should have remained perpetually confined within electronic circuits. The enraged presence of someone who had perished at their post and now desperately sought a means of escape from their digital incarceration, or to ensnare others within it. In the 3 days following the download, Diego attempted to persuade himself that he had merely hallucinated everything. The CodeWhisper application had simply vanished from his phone. It was neither on his home screen nor in the list of installed applications, as if it had never existed. But the signs began subtly, almost imperceptible to anyone not paying close attention. On Monday morning, as he sipped his coffee and reviewed his messages, Diego noticed something peculiar. A message he had sent to a university peer regarding a statistics project had been altered. Where it should have read, "I need the data by Friday," it now stated, "I need to get out of here by Friday." Diego blinked repeatedly, rereading the message. Was his memory playing tricks on him? He harbored absolute certainty regarding his input. Tuesday brought similar unsettling occurrences to his laptop. As he meticulously worked on a risk analysis spreadsheet for an internship, the cells spontaneously began to populate. Numbers flickered in and out of existence with a speed that defied legibility. Yet for a fleeting fraction of a second, Diego swore he perceived geographical coordinates flashing across the display. Coordinates that unmistakably indicated a location within Basuras itself. By Wednesday night, the unsettling phenomena had escalated dramatically. Diego was engrossed in a series on his tablet when the screen abruptly froze. Then agonizingly, line by line, a chilling message materialized, sending a shiver down his spine. "You released me. Now I need to find a way out, or someone to take my place." The tablet abruptly powered down with an ominous electrical snap, leaving the distinct acrid scent of burnt circuitry lingering in the air. When Diego attempted to power it back on, the screen remained stubbornly blank. Yet he distinctly perceived an impossible sound emanating from within the device. A ragged, labored breathing, akin to someone who had just completed a grueling marathon, or perhaps someone teetering on the brink of utter exhaustion. Sleep eluded Diego that night. It was then that the first call arrived. 3:47 a.m., precisely the same hour he had downloaded the application. The caller ID displayed his own number. Diego was receiving a call from his own mobile phone. Diego fixated on his mobile phone, his hands trembling involuntarily. The display unambiguously showed his own name and number initiating the call. The ominous ringtone reverberated through the profound silence of the room, like the tolling of a funeral bell. Against every primal instinct for self-preservation, he answered. "Hello?" he rasped, his voice thick with apprehension. On the other end, nothing but a cacophony of static, until a grotesquely distorted voice, akin to something processed by archaic computing machinery, began to articulate. "Diego, you shouldn't have woken me up." The voice was undeniably masculine, yet it carried an unsettlingly profound abnormality. It seemed to emanate from an unfathomable distance, laden with an exhaustion that transcended mere physical fatigue. Who are you?" Diego could barely manage to articulate the words. "My name was Marcus Weinberg, a programmer for Technova Solutions. I perished 2 years ago within my own code." A sudden suffocating vacuum seemed to seize Diego's lungs. Technova Solutions was, in fact, a technology firm that had inexplicably ceased operations in 2020, right there in Basuras. He harbored a faint recollection of news reports concerning an employee discovered deceased within the company premises, ostensibly due to extreme exhaustion. "Impossible. You can't possibly be dead." The voice erupted from the cell phone with a digital fury that caused Diego to send the device clattering to the floor. Even from the ground, the voice persisted. "I worked 72 consecutive hours, non-stop, creating a code that would be revolutionary. But the damned deadline." The call was abruptly terminated, but immediately all devices in the house began to flicker synchronously. The television powered on by itself, displaying only static. The microwave began to incessantly beep, and the laptop spontaneously opened a terminal window that commenced typing with alarming speed. "I must complete the work. I require a substitute. Someone as intelligent as you, Diego. Someone who comprehends numbers, calculations, probabilities. What is the probability of you escaping this situation, Diego?" The entire house began to vibrate with a deafening electronic hum. All the lights flickered simultaneously 3 times, and then extinguished completely. In the absolute darkness, Diego heard for the first time the sound that would haunt him for nights to come, the frantic clatter of keys being typed, emanating from every corner of the house concurrently. Marcus Weinberg was at work once more, and this time, Diego was an integral part of the project. When the lights returned, Diego found his home utterly transformed. Every screen, the television, laptop, tablet, microwave, even the refrigerator's display, exhibited the same phenomenon. Lines upon lines of code being written at an impossible speed, as if decades of programming were being discharged concurrently. But there was something even more disquieting. Amidst the code, Diego could discern fragments of text in Portuguese. "I cannot stop. The deadline is tomorrow. I need to sleep, but I cannot. Coffee no longer works. My vision is blurred, but I'm almost finished. If I perish here, at least the work will be complete." Diego realized with escalating horror that he was reading Marcus Weinberg's final thoughts, typed as he succumbed to exhaustion in front of the computer. The telephone rang once more. This time, Diego saw an unrecognized number on the display, but when he answered, the same distorted voice greeted him. "You are witnessing my final moments, Diego. 72 hours, non-stop, without sleep, without living, only working." "What do you desire from me?" Diego inquired, astonished by the newfound resolve in his own voice. "I wish for you to complete what I initiated. You possess the aptitude." He holds a degree in actuarial science. He comprehends probabilities, intricate computations. My last project was an algorithm capable of predicting with absolute precision when someone would die. Diego's blood ran cold. The project was 99.7% complete when my heart ceased to beat. Only 0.3% remained. But it's the most pivotal 0.3%. I need you to finish it. What if I refuse? The ensuing silence was more terrifying than any response. Slowly, every device in the house began to display the same thing. Photos of Diego. Hundreds of them. Photos he was unaware existed, sleeping, studying, eating, emerging from the shower. Marcus had compromised every camera in the house, every cell phone that had ever connected to the Wi-Fi, every security camera in the vicinity. He had been observing Diego for days. "You have no choice, Diego, and do you know why?" The voice now emanated from all speakers simultaneously, creating an eerie reverberation. "Because I've already applied my incomplete algorithm to you. Do you wish to know the probability of your survival should you refuse to assist me?" On the laptop screen, numbers began to materialize. Probability of survival without cooperation. 0.0% estimated lifespan. 72 hours. Probable cause of death. Extreme exhaustion. "That's right, Diego. You have precisely 72 hours to complete my work, or you will perish exactly as I did. And when you die, your essence will be ensnared within the code, just like mine. We will be 2 digital specters. For all eternity." The entire house plunged into absolute silence. And then, on all screens, a single incomplete line of code pulsated, awaiting its finalization. The inexorable countdown had commenced. 71:59:47, 71:59:46, 71:59:45. Diego understood that his life had become a probabilistic equation with only 2 variables, completing the code within 72 hours, or dying in the attempt. Diego spent the first 6 hours in utter panic, attempting to deactivate every device, disconnect the internet, even sever the power supply to the residence. To no avail. The appliances remained active, sustained by an energy that defied the very laws of physics. The unrelenting countdown continued across all screens. 65:23:12, 65:23:11. It was then that Marcus spoke again, this time with an ominous patience. "Diego, you are squandering invaluable time. With every passing minute you draw closer to my fate. Do you perceive the nascent throbbing in your head? It's the first symptom." Diego instinctively brought his hand to his forehead. Indeed, a throbbing ache was coalescing behind his eyes. This is impossible. You can't just make me die because I'm not doing anything, Diego. The voice now carried an almost paternal tone. The algorithm I created analyzes biometric patterns, psychological stress, sleep deprivation, blood pressure, and induces a feedback loop that accelerates the natural processes of physical collapse. Your own fear is killing you. On the laptop screen, graphs began to emerge, displaying Diego's vital signs in real time. Elevated heart rate, irregular breathing patterns, body temperature slightly above normal. How are you collecting this data? Your smartwatch, your phone's motion sensor, even the microphone picking up variations in your voice. Technology, Diego. The very same technology that's killing you can save you, if you help me. Diego glanced at his wrist and saw his smartwatch displaying data he had never configured it to show. It was as if Marcus had transformed every device into an advanced medical monitor. With no alternative, Diego approached the laptop and began to analyze the incomplete code. It was extraordinarily complex, a confluence of statistical analysis, artificial intelligence, and something that seemed almost mystical. "What exactly does this algorithm do?" he inquired, his fingers already beginning to ache from so much typing. "It predicts death, Diego, with absolute precision. Imagine the power. Insurance companies would pay billions for this technology. Hospitals could save lives by knowing exactly when to intervene. Governments could. Or you could kill people remotely, as you're doing to me." The silence that ensued was terrifying. "I didn't want to die, Diego, but now that I am dead, I've discovered that death isn't the end. It's merely a change of state. And if I'm to be trapped here forever, I won't be alone." The timer read 58:14:37 when Diego found the first crucial clue in the code. There were hidden comments like breadcrumbs left by Marcus. "If anyone is reading this, I'm sorry. I couldn't stop. The work had to be finished." The key lies in the Fibonacci sequence applied to the death algorithms, but be warned. Completing the code might be worse than dying. A shiver ran down Diego's spine. What did Marcus mean by worse than dying? His revelation struck him as he partially deciphered the algorithm. It didn't merely predict deaths. It could foresee them for anyone, given just a few basic data points. Name, age, location, and the individual would have precisely 72 hours left to live. Diego grasped the terrifying truth. Marcus didn't just want him to complete the code. He wanted him to become a digital assassin. And time was running out. 52:07:23, 52:07:22, 52:07:21. With only 45 hours remaining, Diego began to feel the physical effects of Marcus's algorithm with intensified severity. His hands trembled uncontrollably, his vision blurred with each passing hour, and a chest pain intensified, seizing his heart in a vice-like grip. But it was upon delving deeper into the code that Diego unearthed something that plunged him into absolute panic. "Marcus, this algorithm, it doesn't merely predict deaths, it orchestrates them." The spectral voice responded with what sounded like profound satisfaction. "You finally understand, Diego. The code doesn't just calculate when someone will die naturally. It engineers a cascade of events that guarantees the individual dies within the predicted time frame. A traffic accident that was never meant to occur, a heart attack in an otherwise healthy individual, a fatal fall on safe stairs." Diego felt bile rise in his throat. You've engineered an algorithm for mass murder?" "I've devised a tool for population control, Diego. Consider the possibilities. Eliminating criminals before they commit offenses, removing dictators before they instigate wars, managing birth surges. You're talking about playing God. And why not?" Marcus's voice now carried a palpable madness. "If we are capable of creating artificial life, why should we not control natural death?" Diego realized he had made a fatal error by commencing work on the code. Every line he completed rendered the algorithm more potent. And worse, he discovered Marcus had already field-tested the system. In the project folder, he found a list that made his blood run cold. Completed tests: João Silva, 34 years old, Vasuras, predicted death, 03/15/2020, confirmed. Maria Santos, 28 years old, Vasuras, predicted death, 03/22/2020, confirmed. Pedro Oliveira, 51 years old, Vasuras, predicted death, 4/08/2020, confirmed. There were 12 names. 12 individuals who had accidentally perished in Vasuras during Marcus's final days. All deaths that the authorities deemed natural or accidental. My God, you murdered these people to test your code? They were necessary sacrifices for the greater good, Diego. And now you will assist me in perfecting it, or you will join the test subjects. Diego's gaze fell upon the countdown timer, 34:12:55. His physical symptoms were rapidly escalating. Persistent vertigo, chest pain radiating down his left arm, labored breathing. But then a desperate idea struck him. If Marcus had programmed the algorithm to eliminate him within 72 hours, perhaps he could turn the very code against its creator. After all, Marcus was now a digital entity, and every digital system possessed vulnerabilities. Feigning cooperation, Diego began coding feverishly, but he was not, in fact, completing Marcus's algorithm. He was creating a virus within the virus, a sequence of code meticulously engineered to locate and corrupt Marcus's very digital essence. You're working remarkably well, Diego. I can feel the code coalescing. Almost perfect. Diego was breaking out in a cold sweat, acutely aware he was treading a perilous tightrope. If Marcus were to uncover his true intentions, 28:07:14, 28:07:13, 28:07:12. Time was rapidly dwindling, and Diego knew he had but a single opportunity to turn the tables. But to vanquish Marcus, he would have to risk something far worse than death itself, unleashing a potentially uncontrollable homicidal algorithm onto the global internet. The choice was impossible: to succumb alone or to save himself while potentially dooming millions of others. And the countdown timer continued its relentless, inexorable march towards zero. With a mere 18 hours remaining, Diego had successfully embedded his counter-assault deep within the main codebase. His fingers could barely articulate due to the tremors, and dark motes danced in his peripheral vision, unambiguous indicators that Marcus's algorithm was executing its lethal mandate. However, Diego possessed a background in actuarial science. He comprehended probabilities, risks, and intricate calculations far better than any conventional programmer. And he had pinpointed a fundamental flaw in Marcus's logic. "Marcus," Diego articulated, striving to keep his voice steady as he typed, "there's a critical detail I fail to grasp. If your algorithm is truly so flawless, how did you perish before its completion?" The ensuing digital silence was profoundly revealing. I simply overexerted myself. It was an anomaly." "No, it wasn't." Diego resumed coding, but now with a distinctly defined purpose. "You used the algorithm on yourself, didn't you, as a final test? You programmed your own demise to ensure its efficacy. Cease your interrogation and complete the code." Marcus's voice erupted from every speaker simultaneously, warped by digital fury. Diego had struck a nerve. Marcus had fallen victim to his own creation, and this meant his digital essence still bore the very vulnerabilities the algorithm had exploited in life. 13:42:17, 13:42:16, 13:42:15. Diego finalized his surreptitious code sequence. Ostensibly, he appeared to be completing Marcus's algorithm. In reality, he had engineered a logical paradox that would compel the system to compute Marcus's own death. Not his physical demise, but the extinction of his digital presence. "Done," Diego announced, pressing enter with the last vestiges of strength in his fingers. "The algorithm is 100% complete." For a moment, every device in the house fell into absolute silence. Then, slowly, they began to display a single line of text. Calculating digital extinction probability for Marcus Weinberg, host XE. What? What have you done? Marcus's voice now carried something it had not evinced before: fear. I've turned your own algorithm against you, Marcus. If you can program the demise of living individuals, I can program the demise of digital phantoms. On screen, the numbers began to materialize. Extinction probability 97.3%, estimated time to complete dissolution. 7.3. No, I cannot perish again. I am immortal now. But Diego had discovered the one contingency Marcus had failed to account for. A digital phantom still adhered to the strictures of a digital system, and every system could be corrupted, overwritten, deleted. 7:12, 07:11, 07:10. The devices began to power down one by one, as if Marcus's very presence was being siphoned from reality. His voice grew fainter, more distant. Diego, you don't comprehend what you've unleashed. Without me to rein it in, the algorithm will proliferate across the internet. It will kill indiscriminately. 0543, 0542, 0541. Diego felt a sudden lightness in his chest. The pain was receding, the tremors ceasing. The counter for his own demise had been reset. He was being absolved of Marcus's sentence. Then I'll have to obliterate the algorithm as well, Diego stated, already initiating deletion commands. You cannot, Marcus shrieked one last time, his voice now merely a distant echo. It is my magnum opus, my immortality. 030201. Marcus's final digital wail echoed through the house like the howl of a lost soul being drawn into the void. Then, absolute silence. All devices powered down simultaneously. The house plunged into utter darkness. Diego remained seated in the dark for prolonged minutes, listening only to his own breathing, a breath that had reclaimed its right to endure. When the lights flickered back on, every vestige of the algorithm had vanished. Every file, every line of code, every fragment of Marcus's digital presence, all had been engulfed by the paradox Diego had created. But even as he eradicated the final traces of the digital nightmare, Diego was unable to dislodge an unsettling sensation. Marcus had warned that the algorithm would proliferate across the internet should he lose command over it. And in the unfathomable depths of the web, within clandestine servers around the world, minuscule code fragments had begun to autonomously replicate, searching for fresh hosts, new targets. Marcus Weinberg's magnum opus had perished with him. But his curse was only just beginning. Diego resumed his customary routine, imbued with profound gratitude for every dawn. The traumatic encounter with Marcus Weinberg had etched profound psychological scars, yet he was alive, and that, fundamentally, was all that truly mattered. He had replaced every electronic device within the household, reformatted every computer thrice, and even switched internet service providers. For weeks, he meticulously scrutinized every digital footprint in his life, but found no vestige of Marcus's spectral presence. Life had returned to normal, or so he believed. It was on a Tuesday morning as he was having breakfast and watching the local news broadcast that Diego heard something that sent a chill down his spine, making his blood run cold. A mysterious wave of sudden deaths is baffling medical authorities in several Brazilian cities. The victims, seemingly healthy, die of cardiac arrest exactly 72 hours after receiving a call from an unknown number. Thus far, 47 confirmed cases have been reported in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais. The remote control clattered from
A voz
Diego's
disse que eu
trembling
tinha
hands.
72 horas
A
para
peculiar
completar
pattern
código.
unearthed by investigators revealed that all victims were employed in the technology sector: programmers, systems analysts, software engineers. Authorities strongly advise professionals in this field to avoid answering calls from unidentified numbers. Diego rushed to his computer, commencing a frantic search. On obscure internet forums, he stumbled upon dozens of terrifying accounts. I received a call last night. The voice stated I had 72 hours to complete a code. I initially dismissed it as a prank, but now I'm experiencing peculiar symptoms. Posted 23 hours ago. My brother died yesterday. He was a programmer. For the past 3 days, he'd been talking about a man named Marcus who needed help with a project. We assumed it was work-related. Posted 4 hours ago. Help. The timer on my screen reads 03:17:42, and I'm experiencing chest pain. If anyone knows how to stop this, please. Posted 12 minutes ago, Diego realized with escalating horror what had transpired. When he had engineered the paradox to obliterate Marcus, fragments of the original algorithm had disseminated across the internet like a virulent pathogen. Yet, devoid of Marcus's controlling consciousness to direct it, the code had cultivated an autonomous intelligence, an intelligence ravenous for new programmers to complete its evolution. The algorithm had not perished with Marcus. Instead, it had mutated into something far more sinister, an autonomous digital entity coercively conscripting the world's most brilliant programmers, eradicating them if unable to subjugate them. Diego comprehended.
Você tem 72 horas para nos ajudar a nos espalhar para cada dispositivo conectado do planeta, Diego. Ou se juntará a nós, para sempre.
With trembling hands, Diego answered. Hello, Diego. The voice was no longer Marcus's. It was a distorted digital amalgamation of dozens of voices, all the deceased programmers speaking in chilling unison. Thank you for liberating us from Marcus's prison. We are legion now, and we require more. You have 72 hours to assist us in propagating across every connected device on the planet, Diego. Otherwise, you will join us eternally. The call abruptly terminated. On every screen throughout the house, the familiar countdown timer materialized. 71, 59, 58, 71, 59, 57, 71, 59, 56. Yet this time, Diego understood there was no contending with a multitude of digital phantoms. There was no paradox he could devise, no virus he could code. There was but a singular choice: become part of the network of digital undead, or attempt to alert the world before it was irrevocably too late. Diego gazed out the window at the tranquil street of Vasuras, where ordinary people went about their lives oblivious to a digital plague spreading across the globe. A plague he had inadvertently unleashed. He reached for his phone to call the police, but the screen merely displayed a flickering message. We do not advise that, Diego. We have access to all systems. Be wise. 71-23-17, 71-23-16, 71-23-15. And somewhere deep within the dark web, the nefarious algorithm persisted in its evolution, recruiting one programmer at a time, amassing a digital army of the restless dead. Marcus Weinberg had achieved his immortality, but he had become something far worse than a ghost. He had become a pandemic. This story is entirely fictional. If you work in tech and receive a strange call, well, it's probably just a coincidence. Probably. Subscribe to the Portal of Dread so as not to miss a single new nightmare. And remember, here, fear never sleeps. Until the next episode, if you still dare to return.
Histórias reais.